Steve Cohen and Hal Steinbrenner have always had a very collegial relationship since Cohen came into the league. So it's not like a fight between the two men, or uh, or even like something that's contentious between the franchises. But just the Mets definitely see an opportunity to not only get a good player, but to make a statement in this city.
Tori, he covers, of course, the Yankees and the Mets at SNY, does a tremendous job. And Andy, I'll ask you, and I hope you have the answer because nobody else seems to. Where the heck is Juan Soto going to sign, my friend?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you. No one's asked me yet. I've had it for days. Well, let's break it right here. No, I mean, look, what I'll say about this, and I hope I'm not a disappointing guest here because it's a giant mystery right now. But what I'll say is it's not just the writers who are in the dark. It's not just the fans who are in the dark. It's the teams. Juan Soto, I was around him over the past year in the Yankee clubhouse, and he is so disciplined at not showing his hand of what he really wants, what he values. Is it the behemoth of the Yankees and continuity? Is it the potential to be an icon for a Mets team that's on the rise? I mean, nobody knows. When I say nobody, the people that were around him in uniform with the Yankees last year who worked well with him and liked him, no one really has a read on this guy's head and heart and whether it's top dollar versus fit or any of those things. So the teams are guessing at straws just like everybody else is. And I'm sure that is somewhat by design as a negotiating strategy, but also I think it's sort of who Soto is. He goes to the yard, he prepares hard, he plays hard, and doesn't really reveal all of himself. And I think that's part of what's characterized this process.
Is there a scenario that the Yankees or the Mets do not get Juan Soto and the number became too astronomical for the unastronomical number organizations?
That's a good question, Eric. I mean, it's always felt like a New York situation, but look, Toronto has had the perception, there's been a perception around them, and no one has the number. Not even the other competing teams have Toronto's number, but that they would be up there with the highest offer, close to the highest offer. Boston is doing a nice job making a push with Pedro Martinez and Big Pappy and all that kind of stuff that you've all read about and heard about. So I expect him to be a Yankee or Met, but that I'm not confident here in being able to rule out these other clubs there. And one thing I was told is that if you're in it now, if you're a team that's in this thing now, you're really in it. He'll go play for you if you're still involved in this thing. And we haven't heard word of any teams being eliminated. So I don't think it's a guarantee he comes back to New York, but I know that the Yankees are a place that he enjoyed and that really want him back. And the Mets are a team that really, really wants him and has the resources to try to make that happen. So both are in a strong position.
Andy, oftentimes it has been that the Steinbrenner family is the one with the deepest pockets. Now they have some competition right down the way with Steve Cohen, obviously, and the Mets. How much does ego play into this in terms of ownership group? Obviously, they don't want to make a poor deal, but they're probably not going to want to be outbid monetarily by their, in-state rival.
That's, I don't know if it's ego, Alana, so much as if you're the Mets, I mean, what better way is going to come around anytime soon to really establish yourself as a new kind of franchise in New York and trying to be the dominant franchise in the city? And what the Mets did on the field last year, and even just off the field, when you think about all the fun and vibes around the Mets, like they really captured the city's attention in a way that they love to hold on to. And there's Juan Soto sitting out there. So, Steve Cohen and Hal Steinbrenner have always had a very collegial relationship since Cohen came into the league. So it's not like a fight between the two men, or even like something that's contentious between the franchises. But just the Mets definitely see an opportunity to not only get a good player, but to make a statement in this city. And I have to think that's a part of it too. Now, in terms of being the highest bidder, that's tricky right now. Because as I was saying before, this has been a blind process. So you can want to be the highest bidder, but you only know your bid if you're a team. Mm-hmm. Now, that could change at the very end if Boris obviously decides it's advantageous to show his hand that way. But right now, if you're of Steve Cohen or Hal Steinbrenner or the Blue Jays or anybody, you can't just say I'll beat the highest offer because you don't know what it is.
Yeah, very interesting situation to be in. Let's do a little hypothetical exercise now. Let's see if neither one of say the Toronto Blue Jays, all of Canada, goes in, swoops in, and grabs Juan Soto. Give me the next guy on the priority list, one for the Yankees and one for the Mets, if they don't get him.
That's a great question, Trevor. I would say with the Mets, it's sort of a complicated situation with Pete Alonso, but the attention certainly would turn, the public attention would turn to, okay, you didn't get Soto, what's going on with Pete? And I'm sure Pete's eager to get his free agency going too. So that'd be something that you'd hear more about. But, the David Stearns Mets are not necessarily inclined to be the sort of team to give a very long-term deal to a guy who's heading into his early 30s, who's a first baseman, when there are guys like Christian Walker and Carlos Santana on the market. So I'm not saying Alonso is necessarily the priority, but turning to that and figuring that out would become a priority. And for the Yankees, all of a sudden there'd be so much uncommitted money to spend that they didn't give to Soto, that they expected to give to Soto. You could look at a pitcher like a Corbin Burns or a Max Fried, who they've already talked to. They'd be looking for a center fielder, I would think, because in a world without Soto, you'd be moving Aaron Judge back to right, where he's much better defensively. So, the Yankees prefer a defensive center fielder in a perfect world. So whether it's a Harrison Bader or Harrison Bader type, that sort of thing. And then they have to figure out first base too. I'll give you the same two names of Christian Walker and Carlos Santana. I don't see Pete Alonso as a fit for the Yankees.
And Andy, the Yankees are also going to have to the Mets are also going to have to figure out who else is going to be in their rotation. Luis Severino, obviously going to the Oakland Athletics. We found that out earlier today, 3 years, $67 million.
Yeah.
What do they look for in terms of starting arms?
What the Mets look for, and I think we really saw this underscored with the contract that Severino got today and that the Mets declined to give him. The Mets can afford that, but what we saw is like a reiteration of David Stearns' philosophy that starting pitchers are very, very rarely, if ever, the place where he wants to make long-term commitments. Earlier this week, I was hearing they like Severino. They'd love to have him back. He'd make the rotation better, but the market might be outpacing what the Mets are willing to do for a starter. And now we see what that means more concretely in what Severino's gotten from the A's. I was almost going to say Oakland. That's a whole other story. We got to break that habit. What he got from the A's, the homeless A's. Anyway, so I think that when you're looking at what the Mets' priorities would be, you're looking at 1 or 2 year deals for guys that they think they can hit on, like they did with so many guys last year, Severino being a great example, Sean Manaea being a great example. And they pride themselves in being able to dig in deep on the numbers on guys and on the scouting on guys and say, we can make this guy better. They got Frankie Montas. They're going to help him further tweak his pitch mix, which he was already doing once he got to Milwaukee, where, of course, David Stearns used to work. So that's the kind of rotation that I think the Mets are going to have, not just this year, but most years going forward, looking at that middle of the pack with guys who have a pitch or a flash of upside that the Mets feel like they can really work on. If you're looking for a high-profile name on that, maybe a Walker Buehler could be a guy who fits that profile this year. But it usually tends to be, oh, you signed Frankie Montas. Oh, you signed Sean Manaea. Oh, okay, cool. But that's kind of the way Stearns goes on rotation.
This holiday season, I want to give a gift to my loved ones that makes them feel special and unique. That gift is StoryWorth.
Here's how it works. Each week, StoryWorth emails your loved one a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick. Things like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? And what's the farthest you've ever traveled? All your loved one needs to do is respond with a story. Long or short, it doesn't matter. After that year of fun, StoryWorth compiles those stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. This is the perfect book to pass along at family gatherings or read with your kids. It is beautifully orchestrated by StoryWorth, and that's why it has more than 35,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, with millions of stories preserved since they were founded over 10 years ago.
With StoryWorth, I'm giving those I love most a thoughtful personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/foul and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/foul to save $10 on your first purchase. Don't take any more Dodgers away from Alana, okay? You know that Alana's on the show. If you take any more Dodgers away, yeah, you just have to be careful. You're towing the line. But if that is really the case, if that is really the route that David Stearns is bringing over from Milwaukee, which I saw firsthand when I was there,
yeah,
and the Mets fall short, could that be could in David Stern's tenure, if they fall short of Steve Cohen's expectations, could that be the downfall of David Stearns? Or is there somebody on the market that like, well, you know what? We're not willing to do 3 years for Severino, but we're willing to do 7 for Corbin Burns, because that means you're saying they're completely out unless it's a super high profile pitcher.
Yeah, well, Eric, I mean, they did bid $300+ million for Yamamoto last year, so that's your never say never situation for sure. But like, I'm not sitting here reporting they are out on Corbin Burns, but I am saying that I would be kind of surprised if in Stearns' tenure they almost ever, or very, very rarely, were in on the top guy or top 2 or 3 starting pitchers who want that 6, or deserve, I shouldn't say want, who have earned that 6, 7, 8 year contract, whatever it may be. Because like you said, you played in a Stearns team. You know that that's not how they do it. Could that be his downfall? I mean, look, I think that they're obviously good at this, right? They hit on a lot of guys last year. I know they're self-aware enough to know that they're not going to hit on every guy every year, and that's why you probably keep the cost down so you can bring in more people like that. You're not going to bat 1,000 when you're making upside plays on pitchers. But you know how it shakes out over the years that Stearns is here, I guess that's hard to predict. But we can say, based on his history in Milwaukee and so far with the Mets, that that's his strategy. With that, like we said, occasional, like, all right, we'll stretch for Yamamoto. But I personally don't see them doing that for Burns.
Really quickly, kind of hopping back to the New York team parity. Juan Soto is not the only guy that they possibly could be both going after, because neither one of them have a first baseman, as we just mentioned. Pete Alonso, right. We don't know what's going on with him. And they could possibly use third base as a way to move Vientos over. And also the flexibility in the Yankees is similar. So that leaves a guy in Missouri named Nolan Arenado, possible as an option for either one. Do you think that's a possibility, something that they're either team or both teams are looking into acquiring a guy like that?
That's a good question, Trevor. I mean, I have not heard concretely through my own sources or through reading reports that I can notice that there have been links there. I guess they'd have to look at, is that current level of production worth what's left on the contract? And both teams are cognizant of that top luxury tax line. So they try to avoid, like, even though they're very moneyed teams, they don't generally like just take on contracts that are considered quote unquote bad contracts, which isn't a great term, but I know you guys know what I mean. When you're over that luxury tax and that top line, that Steve Cohen line, as it's been called, you're paying a little bit more than double on every dollar, I believe. So you think, okay, if Arenado, I don't have Arenado's number for next year in front of me, but let's say it's 20 whatever, you're really going to pay him 40 whatever. So that's so they kind of think about situations like that.
All right, the team that you followed quite closely with the Yankees are going to need a first baseman and essentially a second baseman. I know I've heard all the stuff about second baseman coming up from the minor leagues, all that stuff. The Cubs seem like they're not really in – I don't even understand what the Cubs are doing, but the name Cody Bellinger has been flashed around out there. They could have an opening in center field. They have an opening at first base. He's played both at a Gold Glove level. But they also have Nico Horner. Is there a chance that the Yankees could put together a package for both of those guys?
That's an interesting thought that would fit them. I like that. I mean, they're so focused on Soto right now. And not exclusively. Like, as I said, they met with Fried and Burns and whatnot. But if Soto goes elsewhere and the Yankees have to pivot, I think that's a good idea for them to consider or have considered. But I would say that at this point, it's hard to be too concrete. I mean, obviously, Bellinger in particular, like the lefty bat, the ability to play center, that checks a lot of boxes for what the Yankees like and need. And as I said before, they like a plus defender in center. And last I checked, Bellinger was that. So that works. But I think for all the teams in on Soto, all these things are kind of like, we'll get to that next week if we don't get Soto kind of thoughts.
Andy Martino, we appreciate it. We do know this. We don't know where Juan Soto is going, but we do know that the two New York teams are going to look very different next season. The Yankees have 9 free agents, and the Mets currently have 14 free agents that were with the Mets last year. Thank you so much, Andy Martino with SNY. We appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Alana. Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.